to cover him off. Kimi Raikkonen on the inside, and he's crashed with Verstappen. He's hit Vettel as well. Raikkonen is out before the first corner, and he's gone into the Red Bull there as well. It's the second time this season.
Brilliant start from Maldonado. He's already passed Raikkonen, who's passed Kobayashi, who was a bit sluggish, and there's Lewis Hamilton slewing into the wall, and oh dear, Roman Grosjean and Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton all coming to grief at the source.
The world of drag racing is simple on paper. 2 cars, 1 strip, 1 goal. Get to the end faster than physics wants you to. But the moment those engines scream past 300 miles an hour, the track stops being a road and becomes a razor blade. 1 slip, 1 gust, 1 tiny mistake, and everything you thought was under control turns into chaos. Today, we're diving deep into some of the most violent, unbelievable, heart-stopping drag racing crashes ever caught on camera. And trust me, what you're about to see proves something terrifying at this speed. Even the smallest failure becomes a catastrophe. It starts quietly. They always do the burnout, the pre-stage, the lights. Everything is methodical. You breathe, the engine breathes, the track breathes, and then suddenly, the world explodes. Jerry Yeoman learned that the hard way. One moment, he was in a clean run at Wichita. Smooth launch, perfect traction, the Pontiac digging in like it wanted the win more than he did. But halfway down the strip, the rear snapped sideways as if it had been kicked by a ghost. The car didn't slide, it launched into a roll so violent that the crowd went silent in a single collective breath. Over the barrier, into the fire, into a storm of metal and dirt and flames. It rolled so many times that the cameras lost count. When it finally stopped, nobody expected movement, but Jerry crawled out. Drag racing doesn't hand out miracles often, but that day it did. The faster the car, the faster things go wrong. Steve Torrence was living proof. He crossed the finish line at over 320 miles per hour, victory in the bag, when a rear tire detonated like a grenade. The dragster snapped sideways so hard the chassis split open, peeling itself apart like paper. In a blink, the car wasn't a machine anymore, it was debris. The track wall became a blender, throwing sparks 20 feet high. The cockpit skidded across the strip, half a car dragging a full life. That's what 300 miles an hour does. It doesn't crash you and erases the concept of control. But drag strips aren't just for purpose-built monsters. The supercar crowd shows up too, chasing numbers they should probably leave alone. Like the guy with the Audi R8, who thought 1,500 horsepower was something you get used to. His launch was picture perfect until it wasn't. The rear stepped out, he tried to save it, and the Audi answered with nope. The car ping-ponged across the lane before the concrete wall smacked the front end so hard it looked like the hood tried to leave the country. The spin afterward wasn't a spin, it was a cry for help. When it stopped, the R8 looked like it had fought a tank. That's the price of too much power on too little track. Old crashes, they hit different. Less safety, less tech, more fear. Eddie Hill's Sonoma wreck still feels unreal even today. He hit the washboard bumps near the end of his pass, popped the chute, and the entire rear half of the dragster tore away like it wanted a divorce. Suddenly, Eddie wasn't driving a dragster, he was driving half of one. The front snapped around, smashed the wall, and launched into the gravel, flipping like a coin tossed by a giant. Every roll pounded the cockpit like a hammer, dust, metal, silence, and then movement, because legends don't quit, even when the car does. And then there was Jerry Caminito. If you've never seen a car actually disintegrate mid-impact, his Memphis crash will live in your mind forever. He was sideways, then he wasn't. The barrier hit him with the force of a train, and the blue thunder literally came apart, nose, tail, wheels, everything, leaving Jerry strapped into a tiny fragment of chassis that cartwheeled across the grass like someone had thrown him off a cliff. Halfway through the rolls, he partially fell out, then got slammed back in. It looked impossible to survive, but somehow, someway, he did. Fast forward to modern times, where even with perfect safety, disaster still finds a way. Jason Grimmer discovered that in St. Louis, he was inches from the finish line when his dragster took flight like it wanted to join the Air Force. The nose lifted, the car went weightless, and then it veered right straight into the concrete wall. The impact folded the front, spun the car into another flip, and ignited a firestorm as the chassis shed pieces like confetti. The flames chased him down the strip as he slid to a stop. When the fire crew arrived, the car looked cooked. But Jason alive, shaken, and probably rethinking some life decisions. Supercars again, because if there's one thing drivers can't resist, it's a number on a board. A Nissan GT-R at TX2K showed just how quickly things get out of hand when traction disappears. The car stepped left, the driver saved it, stepped right, saved it again. Then the GT-R said, "You know what, let's try the other wall." It hit with enough force to bend the concrete itself. You don't bend concrete without making a point. But the most chaotic crashes are always the ones involving two cars. Geneva Nash and John Richardson proved that during one of the most unpredictable runs in top dragster history. Nash lost control first, swerving across lanes like the car was being blown by the wind. But Richardson stuck to his line until she came back a second time and clipped him. The hit was instant. Both cars flipped, hers rolling like a drill bit, his tumbling sideways with body panels ripping off like paper. When they stopped, there was debris across half the track. Watching them get out of their cars was like witnessing two people cheat death at the same time. And then there was the nightmare collision between John Force and Kenny Bernstein. Force's parachute deployed at the wrong moment, ripping the rear end apart and sending his car straight into Bernstein's lane. They collided so violently that the bodies exploded off the frames. Bernstein's funny car went nose first into the wall. Force spun through a cloud of debris. The safety crews ran like their lives depended on it. Both men survived. How? Nobody knows. Tony Schumacher's two crashes in Memphis were the kind of horror you expect once in a career, not twice. The first, a right-hand snap into the wall at over 320 miles per hour. The dragster rolled so violently that the cockpit separated and flew across the grass, bouncing like a stone on water. 3 years later, another one. This time, the car lifted, exploded in midair, and dropped into the track like a meteor. When he climbed out, people weren't sure if they were looking at bravery or insanity. Brittany Force had one of the most terrifying chute deployments gone wrong. Flames, smoke, a snap sideways, a crush into the wall, then a slide across the track into the opposite wall, ripping the front end clean off. The cockpit slid like a sled across the track. She climbed out like a warrior who'd just walked out of a fire. Chris Thorne had a similar experience, drifting toward the center line, then snapping into the wall, flipping instantly, and disintegrating in seconds. The car folded around him, pieces flying everywhere. But like everyone on this list, he walked away because drag racing safety is built on the bones of crashes just like these. Clay Millican's blowover was movie-level chaos. 1 second, the Dukes of Hazzard-themed dragster was hooked and flying. The next, the nose lifted, the air caught it, and the entire machine flipped backward into a perfect upside-down flight. It slid on the roof across the line, sparks trailing behind it like a meteor. Brandon Bernstein's run in Englishtown was pure violence. A tiny correction became a slide, which became a flip, which became a smash into the wall that hit the cockpit with full force. No padding and no cushion. Just impact. He survived, but the car didn't. Pat Dakin's blowover in '98. One moment on the ground, the next moment the dragster is vertical, then spinning like a helicopter blade before slamming into the concrete in an explosion of parts and fire. Nothing about it looked survivable, yet he lived to race again. Larry Dixon's Gainesville crash defied physics. The dragster split clean in half at full speed, sending the front half straight up like a rocket. It flipped, twisted, and punched the wall twice before skidding to a stop. The front axle was still rolling down the track 300 feet behind him. Al Hoffman's fiery launch into the catch fencing. Legendary, the car exploded, turned into a fireball, and rocketed through the net like a comet. Nothing was left but a roll cage and a shaken driver who somehow still won the race. And then, the wildest double crash you'll ever see. Monty Green flips, rolls, smashes, then seconds later, his competitor hits the opposite wall, flips, breaks apart, and goes up in flames. 2 crashes, 1 run, no contact, just chaos. And if you think that's wild, Phil Lamatina's crash in Australia was on another level. The front end snapped off at full power, sending the rest of the dragster launching like a rocket. The car broke in half, flew through the air, and slammed into the wall so hard it looked unreal. He survived with barely a bruise. Drag racing might be the purest form of speed, but it's also the purest form of danger. These crashes show one thing clearly: the line between control and catastrophe is razor thin. One blink, and the track decides your fate. If you enjoyed this insane ride through drag racing's most brutal moments, hit like, subscribe, and buckle up because in this sport, the next disaster is always one green light away.